Hello, everyone. My name is Susan, and let me tell you the wildest, most unbelievable story you've ever heard. The story of how Tom Hiddleston promised to marry me. Yep, you heard that right. Tom Hiddleston, the Hollywood superstar, fell in love with me, a very average-looking 46-year-old woman. Or at least that's what I thought at the time. We had plans to start a whole new life together in London, and then everything fell apart. I ended up broke, alone, and back to living with my dad in his one-room apartment. Honestly, I still can't wrap my head around how it all happened. Before you go thinking I'm some hopelessly naive romantic, let me just say, I'm an intelligent, well-educated, independent woman. Grounded too, or so I thought. But let me take you back to how this whole mess got started. It was a Friday night, and I remember it so clearly. I was curled up on the couch, a glass of wine in hand, when I decided to watch The Avengers for the first time. Everyone had been raving about the Marvel movies, but superhero stuff had never really been my thing. Well, that night changed everything. Because then he showed up on the screen. Loki, played by Tom Hiddleston. Mischievous, charming, and dare I say, dangerously captivating. By the time the movie ended, I was officially smitten. I mean, the way he spoke, that sparkle in his eyes, and that devilish grin, I was hooked. Completely. That's when I thought, why not see if he's on Facebook? To my complete shock, there he was. An account with his name and photo. I hovered over the message button, feeling ridiculous. But then I thought, what harm could a simple hello do? So, I typed out a quick message. Hi, I just watched The Avengers and you were incredible as Loki. I didn't expect a reply, come on, he's a massive Hollywood star. So I sent it, shrugged it off, and went on with my life. Then 2 weeks later, I almost fell off my chair. I got a notification. Tom Hiddleston replied to your message. My heart nearly exploded. Was this for real? Tom Hiddleston messaging me? Or so I thought. I clicked on it, my hands shaking. His reply was simple, but kind. Thanks for the sweet message and for being a supportive fan. And just like that, my heart was racing, my palms were sweaty, and I couldn't stop smiling. I mean, Tom Hiddleston, the Tom Hiddleston, had messaged me. After that, we started chatting almost every day. At first, it was all very innocent. He, or whoever it was, seemed to genuinely care about me. He asked about my life, family, work, and even little things that made me happy. We shared stories and laughed a lot, and before I knew it, I was opening up to him like never before. Despite being a well-educated, independent woman, I found myself falling for his words, falling for the dream he was selling. Then, out of nowhere one day, he asked, "Are you single?" My heart went into overdrive. I told him yes, I was. He seemed so interested, so sincere, and I started to imagine what it would be like if this was real. The more we talked, the more convinced I became that maybe, just maybe, Tom Hiddleston was actually into me. But I wasn't totally naive. I had my doubts. I mean, how could a huge Hollywood star be interested in me? I wasn't a supermodel. I was just me. So I decided to test him. I asked for a video call. Tom agreed. We set a time, and I was nervous but hopeful. When the call finally connected, the room he was in was dimly lit, almost pitch black. There was a man sitting in the corner of a bed, with the phone set a ways away from him. His mouth and hands were moving, but the sound wasn't coming through. I assumed it was just bad Wi-Fi because, hey, that happens, right? But I saw his face. And for whatever reason, that convinced me. I was sure it was Tom Hiddleston. My doubts vanished, and I felt a rush of hope as if maybe this whole crazy thing was real after all. Throughout our chats, he kept reminding me that our communication had to stay secret, because he was a famous Hollywood actor. He talked a lot about privacy and the media hounding him, and honestly, it sounded reasonable enough. So I agreed. I didn't even tell my best friend Nancy that I was messaging Tom Hiddleston on Facebook. I kept it all to myself, even the video call, feeling like I was protecting this precious private thing. Then, after the video call, everything seemed to shift into a higher gear. Tom told me he had fallen in love with me, and I was floating on air. He sent heart emojis, little kiss faces, and messages full of affection. It was like a teenage fantasy, except it was happening to me. A 46-year-old woman who should have known better. But I was smitten, completely and utterly. One day he told me he was ready to send his private jet to bring me to London, so we could finally be together. I know, it sounds absurd, but I was swept up in the fantasy. And then, the grand finale. One night, he proposed. He called me his soulmate, said he'd never felt this way about anyone before, and that he couldn't imagine life without me. I was floored, speechless, and then, of course, I said yes. I had visions of a whole new life. Marriage, living with Tom Hiddleston, and starting over in London. But he asked me to keep it quiet, just until we had a wedding date set. So I kept it all to myself, bursting with excitement and yet full of this strange secret joy. Then came the twist. Tom said his lawyer would be in touch to sort out the details of our marriage. The next day, I received a message from someone claiming to be Tom Hiddleston's lawyer. He explained that to prepare for our marriage, I needed to pay $1,000 a week to a special marriage foundation. Tom would pay the same amount to show equality between us, and the money would be refunded to me after our wedding. I know it sounded strange, but the lawyer insisted this was standard procedure for someone as high profile as Tom Hiddleston. So I convinced myself it was all part of the Hollywood lifestyle, and I paid. I figured I'd get the money back anyway, right? Weeks turned into months, and the expenses just kept coming. There was still no wedding date. Whenever I asked, Tom had some excuse about waiting for his film schedule to settle. Meanwhile, the lawyer kept demanding more and more money. I ended up selling my car, and then my apartment. I even sold the house I'd inherited from my grandmother just to keep up with these insane payments. My savings disappeared, and I was dangling on the edge of financial ruin. Yet, I clung to the hope that we'd finally be together. But when I ran out of money and couldn't pay anymore, I knew I had to talk to someone. So I told my best friend Nancy everything, thinking maybe she could lend me a little cash. Instead, her jaw dropped. Her eyes went wide with shock. "Susan," she said, her voice shaking, "you are the victim of a romance scam. You have to go to the police." My stomach sank, and I felt like I'd been punched. I didn't want to believe it, but deep down, I knew Nancy was right. We went to the police, and they confirmed it. The video I had seen was a deep fake, a digitally manipulated clip designed to make me believe I was speaking to the famous actor. The Tom Hiddleston I thought I'd been talking to never existed. The scammers had covered their tracks so well that the police couldn't find them, and all that money I'd paid was gone forever. So there I was, broke, alone, living in my dad's tiny one-room apartment, trying to pick up the pieces of my life. The hardest part? Realizing that even someone like me, a grown, educated woman, could be fooled when her heart was involved. It's easy to think, oh, I'd never fall for something like that. But when you're lonely and someone gives you attention, even the most outrageous fantasies can feel real. And here's the lesson I learned the hard way. Never send money to someone you've never met, no matter how convincing they sound. If something feels off, trust your gut and talk to someone you trust. Love sometimes makes us a little foolish, but protecting yourself should always come first. Remember, the most dangerous lies are the ones we tell ourselves, hoping they'll come true. I have to admit, I saw the red flags, but I just didn't want to acknowledge them because the fairy tale was simply too good to give up. My hope in telling this story is that it will act as a red flag for anyone longing for connection. Don't let loneliness or the dream of love pull you into a dangerous trap.